lunch.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amy.
And I'm Audrea. I'm just ready to get into this book.
And this is the right crowd. So grab a cup of coffee.
Or a cup of tea.
Maybe a little something on the rocks. And let's get started. All righty. So we are wrapping up John Truby.
I'm sorry, I had a glass of water here, people.
What are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm fine. This is great.
You're fine. We're all fine. Everything's fine.
I'm fine.
I'm like, do we need to give you a moment, Audrey?
We're wrapping up Truby today.
Yes, we are.
The series. So what chapters are in this series? Let me get back to my notes here on the screen.
So we chapter 10 and 11, and guys, it's this long. So this is going to be short video for us.
Yep.
Which is cool because the last one was like 5 years long. So this one will be like short. And this one has the diagrams that I told you guys were coming. So
right. Yes. So this one has a big title, the first one, chapter 10, which when I first got the book, I remember looking at that title and going, oh my gosh, could you be more snooty and academic? And come on. Scene.
But what's the title?
It's Scene Construction and Symphonic Dialogue.
Well,
Symphonic Dialogue. So this actually, especially coming off of the last, we know you're watching all of these videos, but the other one was on plot and scene weave. So coming right out of scene weave, you go into scene construction and symphonic dialogue. And I loved this chapter, despite that title, because it talks about how to build a good scene, which is, oh my gosh, I've been looking for a book to do that, to just talk about how to build a good scene, and it's right in this chapter. He talks about a scene as a little mini story, and the part that I highlighted here is that a scene, a good scene, has 6 of the 7 structure steps, with the exception of one of those structure steps. So 6 of the 7 that he says you have to have are in it should be in a scene to make the scene a good scene. And then he goes on to say, I highlighted a lot of this one. I'm gonna get comfortable. Get comfortable. All right. So he also goes on to say about how you should determine to construct any scene, you need to determine it needs to achieve 2 objectives. You need to determine how it fits into and furthers the overall development of the hero, and make it also a good mini story.
Wait, we're developing the hero? Sorry.
Yes, which is why we talked about how if it fits a good scene, if you could take it out, I think we talked about that in plot when we talked about scene weave. If you can take it out and the story doesn't change, you just need like a sentence that you could use someplace else, then that scene should not be in the book. Take it out.
Right.
But this is more building on that.
And I like that he says that those 2 requirements that you just said, sorry, I know y'all probably can't hear it, but one of my dogs, whenever she scratches, is jingle, 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 jingle. What I like that he says right after those 2 points is that these 2 requirements determine everything. And the arc of the hero's overall development always comes first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. No pressure.
Can the video be over? Like, is there anything else to say?
Mic drop.
And then he even says, to construct a great scene, ask yourself the following questions. And then he gives you a list of questions to answer for your scene. Like, he's telling you exactly how to do it to make it good.
Oh, yeah. And
you were talking. I'm sorry. Let me sit back and relax again.
No. We're both talking, but in that list of questions, my favorite one to ask is the one about problems. What problems must be solved in the scene, or what must be accomplished? And that's has been the bane of my existence the bane of my revision process the past few weeks or months. on this one book. But yeah, I took that whole section and rather than highlighting the whole section again, I just put a highlight line like this whole thing. Just read this whole thing over and over again in a loop. But yeah, that's great for revisions, for writing anew and for revisions.
The two that I liked the most was the endpoint. And he says, how does that character's desire resolve? And then it says you can focus the entire scene toward that point. And then he talks about a plan. He says there's direct and there's indirect. And then he tells you the difference between the two. And I've never even thought about it.
Yeah, that was different. The indirect plan and the direct plan and how they affect or impact the story. And I love how he uses like going back to your diagram here, he uses the triangle. He said a scene should be built like that, with beginning with a broad frame and narrowing to the ending keyword or line, which, man, and when an author can write scenes like that are focused and tight, they are so good. And they just end when you're just like, yep, move on to the next. Let me get to the next.
They're the ones where you're like, okay, I'm going to read a chapter before bed and it's 10 o'clock. And then before you know it, you're at the last page and it's 4:30 in the morning. Like that's, yeah. That's not going, how much longer is this chapter before I can go to bed? Like that's the difference.
Those are such good writers. And whenever I write a review if you read a book and you like it, you should write a review on Amazon for that author. Please do that. But whenever I read a book and it's like that, like J.R. Rain is an author who's like that. She writes, it's about, she's a vampire detective. So she's a vampire PI. I read the first book and I was literally like, my eyes, I was like holding them open, trying to scan the book because I did not want to go to bed. They were so good. I was like, okay, finally this book is over. But what happens next? I want to know. I'm very concerned about this character. I get mad at those authors. So mad in a happy way. So my reviews always say, darn you for writing so good. Darn you for developing a character that I can't wait to get back to the page on, or, can't wait to read the next one. You are ruining my sleep. But anyway, so here's how to construct scenes that make people ruin their sleep because they're so well constructed and move you through the book.
And make them pre-purchase buyers for the next one.
Yeah. All right.
I have under dialogue is one of the things that's next. And I think this is interesting because I've read books like this. And it says most writers ask their dialogue to do the heavy lifting work, the work that the story structure should do. The result is dialogue that sounds stilted, forced, and phony.
Yeah, I also had an epiphany on this one with the dialogue. This section was, I thought I thought I had a good understanding of dialogue, but I have, as I've been reading through my book, I've got dialogue like that's moving them from one scene to the other. And one of the key points from the dialogue, just like you said, is good dialogue is always more intelligent, wittier, and more metaphorical and better argued than in real life. And it should not be just moving one character from one scene to another. It has to do more. And he said, even your characters that might not be very smart sound, in whatever their vernacular is, they sound more profound on the page because they have to to move the people through the book. And when I read that, I'm like, okay, I'm very emphatic about this. Okay, I can cut out that dialogue where it should really just, so where should we go next? We should go to the hall. It's so boring. And one of the keys that you've probably heard in other classes or from other writing teachers or in other books, if you're bored writing it, the reader is going to be bored reading it.
And the difference is they can put it down and walk away.
Yeah. Yep.
I also like that he gives you an example of how you should write your dialogue, that you're writing it as you would construct a scene. So it's purposeful.
Yes, purposeful. That's the word. Purposeful dialogue. Yeah. And one of the other things I highlighted is a great quote. Even when a character is wrong, he is wrong more eloquently than in real life. It's like, oh my gosh, yes, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it was really good. Hadn't really thought about that there's different types of dialogue. I just thought dialogue was dialogue, but apparently there is dialogue that is harmony and there's dialogue that is melody. Who knew? And he also breaks down there's a story dialogue and there's moral dialogue, which one is melody and one is harmony. Is there anything else on that before we go to the scene part that you wanted to talk about?
No, yeah, and hence that symphonic dialogue, the harmony, the melody, and so forth, the leitmotif that he adds in here. And I love some of the examples that he pulls out for dialogue. The Cool Hand Luke, the Cool Hand Luke example where I stick my neck out for nobody, and some of those things were great for helping me to understand what he meant by his dialogue. But no, it was all very interesting. I'd never thought of it as melody and harmony either. But yeah, let's go on to see more about scenes.
And he gives us that triangle again, but he puts a triangle within the triangle. And he shows that the first scene of the story should have its own within the story. You think of it as an inverted triangle inside the larger triangle. And that the opening scene also suggests the thematic patterns of identity and opposition.
Mm.
And that the opening scene is the foundation of every character and every action in the story. To me, this is like the opening scene is the promise you're making to the reader for the whole thing.
Which is pretty weighty. That's a lot of pressure.
That's why they say get your first line, your first paragraph, your first chapter right.
Yeah.
Because that's where all the promises are. And then he gives examples.
And then, and he moves that triangle, like you said, from the top of the scene to the end of the scene. And the examples that he uses are excellent for explaining that, how the scene should move. And then the writing exercise for this one is another great one to do whether you're revising or writing anew, and how the scenes. Oh yeah, I remember now. It was that's what I've been trying to remember the part I was working on the other night from this book, and it was write a scene that only uses action, and then no dialogue, and see how it moves along, and then write that same scene using the dialogue, so that you're making sure that you're using both harmoniously, or they
Right.
both work together dynamically to further that scene, which is a really cool exercise. Letting your characters tell the story without words. It's such a cool way to look at your scenes.
Yeah. What page are you on?
I was on 416.
Okay. I want to go back to 401 where he talks about your closing.
Oh yeah.
And he says the final scene is a miniature of the entire story.
Yes.
It's almost like what you tell people when you're teaching. tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them.
Yeah.
So your opening scene is, here's what we're going to talk about. And then we talk about it. And then when we're done, here's what we talked about. It's kind of like, I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, that's what it seems like to me he's saying, is that tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And then he says, done well, the final scene gives you the ultimate funnel effect. The key word or line at the end sets off a huge explosion in the hearts and minds of the audience and resonates long after the story is over.
Ooh, yeah.
Really good book. You're still thinking about it the next week. Even if you read it in one sitting because it was so good you couldn't put it down. All right. So anything else in this chapter that you wanted to talk about? Because this chapter is a lot of breakdown.
Yes.
It's almost like he's following his own example.
Mm-hmm.
Is that this last chapter is telling us what he's told us.
Yeah. And I love how we've talked about the examples and lauded the examples through these videos. But when you're trying to think of closing scenes, good closing scenes, if you've seen the movies that he's referencing, you can harken back to why those scenes just like, oh my gosh, the beginning of A Great Friendship, when the end of Casablanca, or the Seven Samurai. Now, oddly enough, I have not seen the Seven Samurai. That's the name of that movie, right? Yeah, Seven Samurai, which is a classic, Kurosawa. Don't tell all my geeky movie friends. I never actually saw that one, but I did see The Magnificent Seven, which is based on the Seven Samurai, and that same ending scene. That's why The Magnificent Seven is so well. That was a very good remake of that original movie. But that ending scene is in there, and it is pretty poignant. And you do see what the screenwriter or the director was illustrating there, and why it was so powerful.
Yeah, and that was I did like The Magnificent Seven. And actually, when you said that, I was like, I have it in there. Maybe I'll watch that today.
We just watched it a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, so chapter 11, last chapter.
Ta-da!
And it's titled, oh, you don't ever do that. I'll have to leave that one in. The Never Ending Story. Okay, so what did you think of this chapter?
I was gonna say, and it's not called The Never Ending Story because it's like you're in a movie that you feel like has been on forever, and it feels like it's never gonna end, and you're like, oh my God, how much more? How many more fake false?
Like, oh my gosh, it's only been 45 minutes. Yeah.
Or my husband, who's been reading a book, it feels like he's been reading that same book for 7 years. He's a type of reader, bless his heart, that when he starts, no matter how bad the book is, he will not stop. He will not. Oh. He has to finish a book. And I was like, it's like you, it's okay.
I don't have time to read bad books, just like I don't have time to eat bad food.
Yeah. Yeah. Life is too short. There are too many books in the world to read, to slog through a bad one. But
so what does he mean by the never ending story?
He means that you write a story that's so good and constructed so well that it lives on in the hearts and minds of your readers or your watchers if it's a screenplay.
Right. And then he goes into what that is and how to do it.
Yes. And the part that for Never Ending Story, I loved, and I like highlight it twice. I don't know if you can see it. There's like a light blue.
Yeah.
Then the next time I read it, it's like it's more emphasis on this. It's when you force your characters, especially your hero, to act in an unbelievable way, you immediately kick the audience out of the story because the plot mechanics come to the surface. I can't tell you how many movies or books I've read where something they've done strikes such a false note that it's like, okay, now I see what he's doing. I see what's happening here. I don't like it. I mean, I don't think that character would normally do that. The way that doesn't ring true. And so you never want to do that. And instead you want to make everything so harmonious and so organic, it flows and it's seamless. So by the time your reader gets to the end of the book, one of the things that he talks about to build that never-ending story, because he says you want that never-ending story. And one of the techniques he mentions, which made me remember The Sixth Sense and some of the others, is that reveal that is it's so well placed, it's so well done, and it fits them so well that you leave it rings in the hearts and minds of your readers for so long that they're replaying the movie, trying to figure out what you did. How did you do that? What did I miss? And for me, The Sixth Sense was like that. When I figured it out, I immediately started working backwards. And he said that's how you create a never-ending story, because you can only do that one time, but still your readers are going to go back and go, but wait, go, and they're going to start that over. And there are movies that I can watch over and over again because they were so well done. And even though I know what's going to happen, I can't wait to go on that journey again.
Yeah. Yep. I always think of Mr. Darcy walking across the field, like it was great.
It was.
And that will make me that makes you think about all of their interactions before that. When they first met, the times they see each other, the fight that they had for them to end up in that position. Like yeah. Anything else for this chapter?
Nope. We've covered it all. So we've covered the entire book. All 123 pages, or 22 pages of this book. We did it. We got through it. And I feel like I'm a better person for it, but my goodness. Oh my gosh. So you guys who are reading this along with us, or thinking about reading the John Truby, The Anatomy of Story, I personally think it is well worth the read, and it's well worth having in your reference guide. And I am actually, after this video, on my current WIP, work in progress, going to go back through some of the ones that I've highlighted with tabs and do those exercises again for my work in progress. So well worth it.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. All right, guys. We're supposed to tell them what the next book is.
Maybe we should do a teaser.
we haven't decided. We should probably decide though, because we have to start reading it.
We do.
So yeah, we'll let you know later in the comments what the next book is. So be sure to check back when this video comes out, check the comments, and we will tell you what our next book is.
Yep.
That's it.
Bye, everybody.